Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 22nd edition of Office Hours. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy, and I thank you so much for joining me this evening. Before we get into the questions that have been submitted by our community, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, and then a bit about office hours, and then we will go into the questions. We didn't have too many questions submitted, which kind of makes sense because usually we're meeting bi-weekly. But this month, we hosted office hours on the 15th, and today's the 22nd. So we haven't had as many questions come through, and most of them have been about consolidation. So we'll jump into that very shortly. But first, just a bit about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. We are a nonprofit organization founded in 2021 with the vision that all college and career school students in Maryland have the opportunity to achieve these 6 pillars of collegiate financial wellness, that being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. And to achieve that vision, we're helping students build financial life skills and empowering them to thrive. If you'd like to know more about the center, you can always visit us online at mccfw.org. If you'd like to join our mailing list, just go to the contact page, mccfw.org/contact. You can fill it out, and we will keep you abreast of all of our goings on. Like office hours. So office hours is our free semi-monthly virtual student loan clinic that provides borrowers with a trusted venue to help them navigate student loans and prepare for financial success beyond repayment. I have to put this disclaimer out there, and that's that office hours is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as financial or legal advice. We try to give you the most up-to-date information and reliable information as possible. But our information does come from outside sources, and sometimes the details do change, as I'm going to discuss about a popular program tonight. So please do learn about your loans, take account of your personal financial circumstances, and with input from organizations like the Center and other trustworthy sources, combine all of that to make the decision that makes the most sense for you and your household. So with that being said, some changes have taken place since last week's edition. And that leads to our first question, which is, when is the deadline to consolidate for the IDR adjustment? And the IDR adjustment, IDR stands for income-driven repayment. Income-driven repayment plans have a cancellation provision built into them. And that cancellation is supposed to come after a borrower has been in repayment for either 20 or 25 years, depending on the types of loans they borrowed and the income-driven repayment plan that they were enrolled in. The IDR adjustment is basically giving most federal student loan borrowers, everyone who has direct loans or federally held self loans and other federally held loans, everyone who has those types of loans will be given a payment count. And we were expecting that payment count to come in July of 2023. Then I think it became summer of 2023. Now that has been moved to 2024. And because that's been pushed to 2024, there's more time for people to apply to get the greatest benefit through the IDR adjustment. So last week, when I spoke about the IDR adjustment, I mentioned that it was best for borrowers to apply for consolidation by May the 1st. That way, they would be able to get the greatest benefit when the IDR adjustment, when the payment counts were starting to come out in July of 2023. But again, since those counts are not coming now until 2024, that deadline has been extended. So if you'd like to get the greatest benefit from the IDR adjustment, the advice is now to apply by the end of 2023 because the payment counts will come in 2024. So I'm relieved because that means that we have more time to get more people who have those other types of loans, such as commercially held student loans, so that we can get them into the pipeline to maximize their benefits for the IDR adjustment. The downside of this, though, is that for some people who were expecting relief a bit faster, it's going to take a bit longer. But the IDR adjustment is still moving forward. The timeline has just been pushed back. So just a bit about why the IDR adjustment is so important. For one, the IDR adjustment is going to lower the standard for what it takes for a month to qualify toward cancellation by way of IDR or by forgiveness by way of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So the list you see here sums up what time toward IDR forgiveness looks like or what it can include. And again, this IDR forgiveness, any months that you receive toward IDR can be applied to Public Service Loan Forgiveness if you have documented qualifying employment. And this is anytime after October 1st of 2007. So the time toward IDR forgiveness, which can be applied toward PSLF, includes 1, any months in which you had time in a repayment status, regardless of the payments made, the loan type, or repayment plan. So this means that if there was a month where you missed a payment, that's okay. It can count. If you were short a few dollars or your payment wasn't exactly the right amount, that's okay. If you missed a few months of payments, that's all right. If you were in default, those periods do not count. But if you were on one of the balance-driven plans, such as the standard plan, graduated, or the extended fixed or extended graduated plan, those periods can count too, even though they're not income-driven repayment plans. So you can see right away from that first bullet, this really opens up lots of possibilities for people who have been in repayment but weren't necessarily in the right plan, or missed a couple of months, or did not have the right loan type. Secondly, they're going to be looking at forbearances. If you had a forbearance of 12 or more consecutive months, or over the life of the loan, 36 or more cumulative months, then all of those months can count toward cancellation by way of IDR and PSLF forgiveness. Third, any months that were spent in deferment prior to 2013, except for the in-school deferment, can count both toward IDR forgiveness and Public Service Loan Forgiveness. And lastly, any time in repayment prior to consolidation on your consolidated loan. For those of you who have been thinking about consolidating those older, perhaps commercially held FFELP loans, but didn't do it yet because you're thinking that you're not going to get credit for any of your prior payments, that's not the case. With the IDR adjustment, they will look at the consolidation loan, but then they'll also look at the repayment history of the loans that went into the consolidation loan. So if you've got 20 or 25 years of history already, you don't have to worry about that being erased if you consolidate during this IDR adjustment. And as of a few days ago, the deadline to get the greatest benefit by consolidating for this IDR adjustment will be the end of 2023. So we've got several months left to reap that greatest benefit from IDR cancellation. All right, and just a quick refresher. Since we had some updates on student loan relief by way of the IDR adjustment, which affects Public Service Loan Forgiveness, I just wanted to give you all just this summary chart once again that breaks down the applicable benefits by loan type. For the Biden-Harris Student Debt Relief Plan, this is the one that we're waiting for the Supreme Court to rule on. There are no updates as far as that program is concerned now. But for the IDR adjustment, there was a major update, and that's that the deadline to get the greatest benefit from consolidation has been moved from May 1st of this year all the way until the end of this year. That impacts the IDR adjustment as well as Public Service Loan Forgiveness, because any months of credit toward the IDR adjustment can be rolled over to Public Service Loan Forgiveness if you complete the PSLF application, which provides documentation of your qualifying employment. So we will keep on revisiting these different benefits during every edition of office hours, because it's possible that there'll be more updates, who knows, but we're definitely going to keep an eye on those and share the updates with you each time we host office hours. All right, so we've got another question that's about consolidation, but this is about the home buying process. It says, I'm in the process of buying a home. Is consolidation going to mess things up? And this question comes quite frequently. So I just want to take a step back and talk about what consolidation is, and then I'll share some experiences that borrowers have shared with me. So with consolidation, you're taking one or more existing loans and you're combining them to create a new loan. Now, on paper, the consolidation shouldn't affect you in terms of how much debt you have, because the older loans are going to be paid off and a new loan is going to be originated. So the new loan is for the same amount as the balances on the existing loan. So from a dollar standpoint or a standpoint of just how much debt you have overall, nothing is changing because your older loans are being paid off and a new loan is being originated for the exact same amount. Even with the interest rate on the new consolidation loan is calculated as the weighted average of the interest rates on the existing loans. It might be rounded up to the next highest 1/8 of a percentage point, but the interest rate isn't going to be, there's not going to be much difference there. So the debt itself is not really changing much about I'm at a loss for words right now, but your financial picture with debt is not changing. The structure of the debt is changing, but the amount of the debt, the interest rate, there's not much change there. So in theory, it shouldn't affect you at all because you don't have any greater debt once the consolidation loan comes out than you had before. So my thinking is you'd still be eligible for the same amount of home as you were pre-consolidation because the size of the debt, the terms of the debt really have not changed. However, it is something that it's going to show up, as some credit activity. And if you have been through the home buying process before, you know that one thing that bankers or loan officers don't like, they don't like to see surprises when you're going through the process of getting a home loan. So I really encourage people who are going through this process to be in communication with their loan officers and let them know what they're thinking about or if they move forward with a consolidation loan. But anyway, back to why you might want to consolidate. One is to gain access to different types of repayment plans. Consolidation loan, getting a direct consolidation loan may make you eligible for more options where the income-driven repayment plans are concerned, and they might be more affordable. A more affordable payment would be helpful with the home buying process. It can also help you achieve the maximum benefit from the IDR adjustment if you were to complete that consolidation by the end of this year. If you work for the government or for an eligible tax-exempt organization, then you could also make progress toward PSLF. And during this IDR adjustment, you can also get credit for past repayment history and past work history. But making that loan direct would get you on track for cancellation by way of IDR or by PSLF. The key considerations under the original rules for consolidating are that your past payment history would be ignored for the purposes of PSLF. That is not the case now that we are in this IDR adjustment period. The past repayment history can count. Also, with the consolidation loan, it's a new loan, so you have a new repayment term that's going to begin. A lot of times that scares people because they've had a loan for, let's say, 15 or 20 years. They're used to the servicer. They're used to their repayment plan. And then when you consolidate, all of that goes away and you're starting fresh. You have to select a repayment plan. You select a servicer. And the first payment you make will be payment number one on that consolidation loan. And for some people, just starting over, that doesn't feel good and that causes them to not move forward with a consolidation. However, if you have plenty of repayment history, just be mindful that during the IDR adjustment, that past, those months of repayment history, and if you're working in public service, those months of employment history can be counted toward forgiveness. So it's not exactly like you're starting over from scratch. On paper, it's a new loan, so you will be starting from scratch with your payments. However, the history is what's important for the IDR adjustment and for PSLF, and you will not be starting from scratch there. If you do consolidate and enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, you can make sure that your future payments will count toward IDR cancellation. And if you're working in public service, those payments can also count toward public service loan forgiveness. But if we take a look at the dollar amounts, if we're consolidating two loans here, one for $30,000, one for $40,000, you put those loans together, it's $70,000. Either way, it's $70,000. But again, with the home buying process, your credit is going to be scrutinized. So if a new loan pops up for $70,000, somebody's definitely going to take note of that. And consolidation creates a new loan, so it will pop up. Some borrowers have shared with me some experiences shortly after completing the consolidation process and a few of these borrowers were in the process of buying a home. The first one, this seems to be universal, is that people report receiving unsolicited calls and emails from companies that are offering to get their loans canceled for a fee. So this would be, those emails that come with the picture of the president, and then where the website has the president all over and says, President Biden's going to cancel your loan. Call us. It'll just cost you $800 or $1,000, whatever it is. If you didn't ask for that, please ignore it. But this sometimes happens because consolidation is a credit event. It's a new loan. So if you're receiving those unsolicited calls and emails, please just ignore them. You didn't ask for it. Just ignore it. The calls should and emails should taper off within 7 to 10 days. The next thing a few people have told me about is seeing that they have an open balance on both the consolidated loans and the consolidation loan at the same time. And this is something that I think would be problematic or potentially problematic when it comes to the home buying process. So the picture that I showed you before was two loans, one for $30,000, one for $40,000. Once those are consolidated, their balances go to zero, and a new loan is originated for the sum of those old two. That's $70,000. But because of the lag in reporting time, it's possible that when your credit report is pulled, the lender might see the $30,000 loan, the $40,000 loan, and the $70,000 loan at the same time. So you have gone from having $70,000 in loan on paper to appearing as though you have $140,000 worth of loans on paper. It's inaccurate, and you just need to be prepared to explain it. Usually, it seems to resolve itself in a couple of months or less, but this is something that I have heard about happening, and it has caused loan officers to say, hey, what's going on here? So just be mindful of that. Also, I've only heard from a handful of people seeing a decrease in their credit score, and I share these experiences with you to just to let you know what other people have told me. It doesn't mean that this is the experience that everyone is going to go through when it comes to consolidation, especially this last one. They're seeing a decrease in the credit score. I can't speak to that on a mass scale. And also, if there was something else that happened, they might have missed a payment on something, or maybe charged up a bit more on a credit card. If there are other things that took place, those could influence the score too. But I just wanted to share with you what I've heard from borrowers in our community. The key is, with the home buying process, you need to keep your loan officer in the loop. Let them know about the consolidation and the fact that the consolidation loan is actually paying off the older loans. And they've probably heard this before. They should be familiar with it, but they don't like surprises. So make sure that you keep them in the loop. And now that the deadline to consolidate for the greatest benefit from the IDR adjustment has been extended from May 1st to the end of the year, if you're really moving quickly ahead with the home buying process, then perhaps you might think about postponing the consolidation until after the home purchase. It's totally up to you, but this is just something that you could do so that you accomplish both goals. That is successfully purchasing your home and consolidating to get the benefits of this IDR adjustment. Okay. So in a nutshell, does consolidation affect the home buying process? I believe that it will, because it's a credit event, but it doesn't seem to be something that is going to totally end your prospects for home buying. It's something you need to make your loan officer aware of. It's a credit event, so it's relevant, but the key to remember is the overall debt load is not changing. It's just a new loan with some different terms. All right, let's move to our next question, which is also about consolidation. I'm sensing a theme here. Okay, I'm about to consolidate for the IDR adjustment and public service loan forgiveness. My loans have been around since the 1990s, and I have worked for the government the entire time. What if I don't want to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan? Well, this happens pretty often. When you go into the consolidation application, on the first page, you're going to see the loans to be consolidated. And I'd highly recommend looking at your aid dashboard first on studentaid.gov so you can see your total amount of loans, and then compare that to the dollar value that you see when you start the consolidation loan. When you start the consolidation loan application, at the very top of that first page, it's going to say total educational indebtedness. You want to make sure that that number matches the amount that you see on the My Aid page when you first log into studentaid.gov, because if you're consolidating all of your loans, those balances should match. So you'll know that you are consolidating everything. Everything you want to consolidate will have a checkbox next to it already in the application. After you move through the part of looking at the loans and seeing the new interest rate, you're going to be asked about a grace period, whether you want one. If it's for the IDR adjustment, I don't see the need for you to have a grace period. It'd probably be best for you to advise them not to delay the processing. After the grace period section, you're going to be asked if you work for a public service organization, with a recommendation that if you do, you should select MOHELA as your servicer, because that's the only servicer that handles the public service loan forgiveness program. That page is usually easy for most people to digest. When you get further into the application, that's when the questions start to come about your repayment plan. And that's the part that can be daunting, because the application includes the options for, I believe, 8 or 9 repayment plans. And 4 of those plans are based on the balance that you owe. The other plans are based on your income. And to arrive at estimates for those income-driven repayment plans, people are asked to estimate their adjusted gross income. They're also asked to indicate their family size and their tax filing status. It's just for estimate's sake, but just from my experience, it's frightening. There's something about it that's a bit scary to people, reporting that adjusted gross income. Now, at that point in the consolidation application, it would help you to put in something that's accurate to estimate your adjusted gross income. But what you put in there is not something that you're bound to, because after you see the estimates, the next section of the plan is going to ask you to provide your income information if you want to enroll in an income-driven plan. There are 2 ways to do that. You can submit documentation by traditional mail, or you can link to the IRS and allow the Department of Education through the Office of Federal Student Aid to pull the income information off of your personal income tax return so that they can run the formula and let you know what your income-driven repayment options are. So, especially when people are married, this is when it can get a bit more daunting, because if you put that you're married, it's going to ask you if your spouse has a student loan balance, and it will also ask you for your spouse's income. And sometimes that's an area that makes people uncomfortable. So in this particular instance, and I've met with this person has lots of loan repayment history, lots of public service employment well prior to October 1st of 2007. So if everything goes correctly with their PSLF application, once it's approved or once it's reviewed, they're going to be approved because they've got more than 120 months of history. For a person like this, who has that extended history, the kind of repayment plan that they select right now, it doesn't matter as much as someone who is early into the process. So for this person, since the consolidation application requires that you select a repayment plan in order to complete the application, this person could choose a balance-driven plan. It's true that the income-driven repayment plans are the safest when it comes to pursuing PSLF, because we know that those IDR plans qualify for public service loan forgiveness. However, if you've already got the repayment history, you have the employment history, then you could still move your application forward by selecting one of the balance-driven plans. So for this person, what we went with was, first, we'll select a balance-driven plan, and we selected one that had the lowest possible payment. The second thing is we are now going to wait for them to receive a qualifying payment count. If they submit the paperwork this week, hopefully, we'll have an answer in 4 to 5 months. But I've advised everyone that I work with individually, when they're consolidating for the purposes of pursuing PSLF, please do not think that you are denied once you receive that first payment count letter. The first payment count letter, from what I've seen so far, only counts the payment history of the consolidation loan. So if you consolidated in March and you didn't get your payment count for another 4 months, it will say, well, you have 4 eligible payments, and you need to document your employment to turn those eligible payments into qualifying payments. A lot of people see that letter and they're just like, why is this happening? How can I only have 4 payments when I've been, paying for 20 years and working for the federal government for 20 years? This doesn't make sense. Who do I need to call or complain to? You don't have to call or complain to anybody. That's just how the process seems to work so far. The first payment count only considers your consolidation loan. After that count, another count is conducted that considers the repayment history prior to consolidation. And after that pre-consolidation history is considered, then the count should be more accurate. For many people, I've seen it go from, the initial really, really low count all the way up to the congratulations, you exceeded 120. For others, it's been an initial low count, then another count that's a little bit higher, and then another count that's a little bit higher, and then a count that finally reflects all of their history and is more than 120. It seems to be a case-by-case kind of thing, but it's worked out for the people that I've worked with. It's really worked out in about 4 to 5 month period. For this person, I cannot see them getting an accurate count that is less than 120, just based on our review of their loan repayment history and their employment history. But if their count for some reason were to come back, let's say their count was 118, at that point, they would need to contact their servicer, enroll in an income-driven repayment plan so that their future payments would count toward PSLF. So if they were at 118, they converted to the income-driven repayment plan, they would need to make 2 months of payments, then submit another PSLF application after they made the 120th payment. We would wait for that application to be processed, which would take probably another 3 to 4 months, during which they'd have to make payments. And once the forgiveness is approved, if it's found that they overpaid on the direct loan and all those payments will be refunded. So in this borrower situation, because the history is so lengthy, my hope is that they won't even have to go back into repayment, because the application could be approved before the payment pause ends. But if you are on the earlier end of this, and maybe you've only got 5 years of employment, it's best for you to get on track by selecting a payment plan, a repayment plan that is eligible for PSLF. During the payment pause, it doesn't matter. No one's making payments, and as long as you have the employment, most people, not no one, most people who have direct loans and federally held loans are not required to make payments. And so these months can count toward PSLF without payments having to be made. Their repayment plan doesn't matter. But once we are out of this IDR adjustment period for the max benefit that would end it this year, and when repayment resumes, it would be safer to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, because that way you could make sure that future payments will count toward public service loan forgiveness, provided that you still have that public service employment. So all of that to say, this can get into a whole lot of if, then, this, that, kind of thing. It really depends on the person. It's a case-by-case kind of thing. That actually does it for the questions that I had tonight. So I wanted to go ahead and share with you all some information about options for accountability, because I know that sometimes there are issues with servicers and people are wondering how they can get some traction as far as moving those concerns forward to a resolution. Of course, the first thing you should try to do is resolve it with the servicer. If you feel as though the servicer is not cooperating after multiple attempts and you're just getting nowhere, then you do, have options to file complaints. One of them is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You can visit them online at consumerfinance.gov. Next is the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Federal Student Aid Ombudsman. There are very specific concerns that the ombudsman can help with. It's not an option that you take just, for anything. It's a very specific set of issues for you to be able to have your claim addressed by the ombudsman. You can visit them online at studentaid.gov to take a look at the requirements. And if your concern is about PSLF, if you feel that your payment count is inaccurate, you can submit a PSLF reconsideration request. However, if you are a person that recently consolidated and you just received that first payment count is really low, it's quite possible that, this is just that first part of the process where they only look at the consolidation loan. And then in a few weeks, usually they follow up with a count that reflects your pre-consolidation history. So you might not need to submit a PSLF reconsideration request after that, because usually an updated count is coming within a few weeks to a month or so. But if it's been a while and your account just looks really inaccurate, please do reach out and file one of those PSLF reconsideration requests. On a state level, Maryland has a student loan ombudsman, whose office can assist with problems such as failure by the servicers to communicate with the borrower, errors in crediting principal and interest payments, misapplied payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidations or modifications errors, and/or inappropriate collection activity or tactics. So you've got options at the federal level. If you are a Maryland resident, you have options at the state level as well. And specifically, once again, for Maryland, you can submit a complaint through the Maryland Student Loan Ombudsman's website, which is listed there, and I'll make sure to drop it in the comments shortly, through the Department of Labor. And you can also read the Maryland Student Loan Borrower's Bill of Rights to learn about the protections that you have as a Maryland borrower and that you're entitled to. You can also read about the obligations of student loan servicers. That's also at the state's Department of Labor website, and I will drop the link into the comments for you as well. I always like to share informational resources, and the number one source of information about your federal student loans will be studentaid.gov. There you can view your loans. If you're applying for PSLF, you can check to see if your employer qualifies. You can also complete the online portion of the application by using the PSLF help tool. You can also complete the application to consolidate online anytime for free. Also, the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. We have a page that's dedicated to spreading the word about public service loan forgiveness, but much of it is about the IDR adjustment. You can visit that page at mccfw.org/mdtaps. And if you are aware of any public servants in your life, or of any people who've had student loan debt for a lengthy amount of time, please do encourage them to visit that page so that they can learn more about the benefits that might be available to them. Also, the Institute for Student Loan Advisors, TISLA, can be found at freestudentloanadvice.org. Their founder has created a PSLF mega thread that has tons of information about PSLF as well as the IDR adjustment. And on that thread, you will find a lot of people who are sharing their real-time experiences with the PSLF process and updates to the program, such as the IDR adjustment deadline getting extended. Also, they offer free general student loan advice. Finally, I'd like to share the Student Borrower Protection Center, the SBPC. They have created a site along with their partners called cancelmystudentdebt.org, and you can visit that site for a very comprehensive explanation of the different cancellation benefits that are out there, and take a look at those paths to cancellation, as well as any potential action items you might need to complete in order to make sure that you're maximizing those benefits. All right, so that does it for all of the questions that we received in the past week for office hours. I thank you so much for joining me. This video will be uploaded to YouTube shortly and annotated so that people can view the content and go straight to the questions that they'd like to have answered. In the meantime, you can connect with us through social media at the MCCFW. Give us a like on Facebook or a follow on Twitter. And if you have any questions that come up between now and our next edition of Office Hours in April, you can visit mccfw.org/contact to leave your question, and we will make sure to get back to you. Before I go, I'm just going to take a look at the comments. We don't have any questions on Facebook. I did want to share before we go that we are approaching a confirmed $3 million of federal student loan debt canceled by way of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Sure, the number is much greater than that, but we only count the dollars for which we've seen the actual forgiveness letters, and we are approaching 3 million. So just very pleased to be in a position to help Marylanders and borrowers from other states access the benefits that they have earned. So I'm going to take one more look at the chat and Facebook. All right, I don't see anything there, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off for this evening. Thank you so much for your support of the center and of office hours. And until our next edition in April, be well.